Hello and welcome to Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat with Lisa Conway, Denise Finley, and Tiffany Wooten. Let's listen in and see what's happening, who's happening, and what's new in their world.
Join us today as we welcome Roeska Blankevoort, a Tunisian crochet designer from the Netherlands.
Lisa and Denise, I would like to introduce y'all to my dear friend, Roeska Blankevoort. I'm sorry, Ro, I probably just butchered that. We call her Ro for short. She actually lives in the Netherlands with her husband and all of her littles. And she is a Tunisian designer that I have been working with for quite a while. We met several years ago while we were crochet testing together. She loves to design garments, loves using color, and she actually is really good at creating garments that look complicated, but they actually use really simple stitches so everybody can get on the Tunisian train with us. She has been designing since the summer of 2019, and I believe she's got around about a dozen patterns out in publication at this point in time.
Oh, I am definitely going to start digging into her patterns more closely because Tunisian is one of those things I've wanted to do and have never really done. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Yes, beginner, size inclusive, and color. Like I said, I'm in. I love my color, and I've never been a small person in my life. So
that makes two of us.
That makes all of us, except for maybe Ro.
No, I don't think so.
Well, we're glad you're here with
welcome.
us. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ro, what's the weather like out there today?
It was a good day. We had about 17 degrees Celsius. So I have no clue what that is in Fahrenheit, but it was like a mild spring day. You could walk around in your t-shirt. That was good.
That's actually pretty warm. That's probably between 55 and 60 Fahrenheit.
Close, yeah.
Somewhere in there. Well, Ro, we'd like to ask our designers how they got started. When and why did you start designing?
That's a great question, of course. I've been thinking a lot about that, and I've been talking with a couple of people about designing and when do you start something like that? Well, first of all, I think definitely I have an imposter syndrome. I'm like, well, that must have been been out there. That this must have already been done before. But I think I can do it. And then when you have a lovely group of friends around you that encourage you to, just do it, then you just do it. So I started in the summer of the pandemic. So I had a lot of time on my hands, which you wouldn't say with three littles. But at that time in the summer, the daycares and the schools had opened again here. So I had some extra time because I was still working from home. And while Zooming, I had a lot of time to work with my hands while teaching my students because I'm a teacher in my daily life.
How lovely.
And yeah, thank you.
I'm
actually a double teacher, right?
So.
Oh, that's great. I'm teaching biology. So I wanted to do something besides the screens all the time. So that's also why I started with crochet anyways. And then I thought, why not? Why not give it a try? And because I'm quite the ambitious person, I thought, I'm not going to start with a dishcloth. There are so many of them already. I'm going to start with a garment. And this is also because I've been participating as a tester for a lot of designers already, and I love making garments. I just couldn't make a dishcloth. I've tried making amigurumi, but they're just not my thing. I love to make something that I can wear, that I can be proud of, and that people can say, well, wow, where did you get that? And then be able to say, I made that myself. Thank you. So yeah,
I love that. I
Yeah.
totally love that.
I completely agree. I love to make garments also, and it is fun when somebody says, "Well, where did you get that?" And you say, "Well, I made this," and they're all like, the reactions are priceless, right?
yeah, they're absolutely priceless.
Right. Well, let us ask you another question then. Since you started recently, this is new to you. Have
Hmm.
you given a thought to who you crochet or design for? Like, who do you mostly crochet for, and then who do you mostly
Oh,
design
that's
for? Okay.
easy. It's for myself.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
it's I have 3 kids and I have a demanding job. So in this my little spare time that I have, and mind you, I don't sleep very much, so I have some time left. I like to make something for myself, and I have on the occasion made a cardigan for my husband, but that was in the makings for, or at least promised to him for about 2 years before I actually started, before I had the idea. And let's be honest as well, that cardigan is in my closet now because we wear the same size.
That's cute.
So I stole it back.
I have a cardigan like that, except that he doesn't wear it, so I do.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. So I made mine in wool, so it's very warm, and I'm I'm a cold person in the sense that I get very cold very soon, so I'll wear it, and it's too warm for him.
Yeah. My husband, I made him a sweater, which he loved, and he's a big guy, a really big guy. Um,
Mm.
tall, big shoulders. I mean, and he's got a little pooch too, but he's just a big guy, and I took a lot of exacting changes to make it for him. But I made it out of acrylic because I knew if I made it out of wool, he would never wear it because he's like a little heater,
There
you
you
know.
go.
Also,
Hmm.
let me, since you design for you and you crochet for you, which I think is lovely, by the way.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this, and first of all, let me tell our listeners out there that Ro is coming to us from the Netherlands. In case you haven't noticed her lovely, beautiful accent. So,
Oh, thanks.
let me ask you this question: do your patterns come in multiple languages?
Well, you would think so, but I design and I think and I crochet in English. So I have a couple of patterns that are in
Mhm.
Dutch, and I have a couple that my friend is translating for me, but I primarily design and work and think crochet in English, actually.
I see.
And before I was a teacher, I was a scientist for a couple of years, and so my work environment has been primarily English. And also the last 4 years, I taught in English. So I'm used to thinking and working in English. So for me, it was very logical to have my patterns in English and to have the patterns tested in English and to have an enormous um, group of friends that are USA and UK based.
I knew your English was very good. You hardly have an accent at all, really. And
It's just
so
pretty.
it's stunning to me that you don't automatically write it in your native language.
No, I've done some translations for other people that wanted to expand to Dutch, but I found that I really had to look up the abbreviations. I had to look up the
Mm.
terminology, and it didn't come natural for me.
So that just took care of my next question, which would be, what challenges do you face in writing in a foreign language? And again, you said the abbreviations and such.
Yeah, with the difference that the foreign language would be my native language,
Right,
but the
right.
crochet language is the foreign one.
Oh, the terminology is different in Dutch.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, it really is, Denise. I actually do chat moderation with Ro for her patterns. And on her first couple of patterns, she actually had both Dutch and English chats running. And she had some amazing testers in both chats, but the poor Dutch girls, they were amazing because I would actually have to use a translation service to understand what was going on. And they were so forgiving of me, but it was just, I would get to the point that I would have to message Ro. I was like, help, I don't know what's going on. I'm so lost. I
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So for example, like US terminology, a double crochet
Right.
is, if I would loosely translate it from Dutch, a stick.
Okay. Wow.
So they would make a stick.
Well, that makes sense
Interesting.
if you look at it that way. I mean,
If you
visually.
look at it that
Yeah.
way, yes. But a single crochet would be a tight one.
Wow. I guess it is quite
Interesting.
different.
And Ro, do you write with the US terminology? Because I know in the UK it's very different.
Yes, ma'am. I do write US terminology mostly,
Okay.
or only.
Well, that makes sense why Tiffany is your tech editor. Having a US tech editor makes a lot of sense.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you crochet other people's designs? And if you do, why? If you don't, why not?
I absolutely do. I love the concept of a good design rather than having to how do I say this politely? I'd rather steal something real good than invent something bad, if that makes sense.
In other words,
No.
you'd rather get forgiveness than permission.
Well, I wouldn't steal it because I would make it my twist into it, but I'd rather
Correctly.
experience something from someone else's pattern and think, okay, so this could work
Sure.
and this doesn't work, and apply that to my patterns. So I definitely do that.
That makes
Also,
that makes sense.
sorry, right. And also I like to sometimes just mindlessly crochet something instead of having to write down every single stitch that I'm making, or sometimes just fudge it
That makes
and
sense
not care
too.
about it.
Sometimes we just need to do rather than think about.
You can write down. And also, and I've mentioned this before, I think it's also part of the imposter syndrome. And I have all those ideas in my head, and Tiffany knows this. And I've written a lot down, and I'm sketching all the time. And then I'll send some, and Tiffany's like the best supporter, going, "Yes, you should definitely make that." And then I'll go, "Yeah, but doesn't it look like someone else's? Could I pull this off?" And then sometimes a design is thrown in a corner because I don't feel it for a little bit, and I feel the imposter syndrome going, "You can't pull this off." So that's why sometimes designs are not on my hook, but someone else's things are on my hook, so I can just keep that crojo alive, let's say.
What's funny is I'm sitting here looking at my corner right now. I'm crocheting a cardigan from a tutorial that I finally broke down and watched one on YouTube. It was so easy and so simple. I even have one planned for my husband. And then that's my kind of middle of the day crocheting. My first thing in the morning, I'm doing a knitted, very intricate lace sweater for my granddaughter who's expecting her first child.
Oh,
And then I have this granny square blanket that it's called my TV crocheting, So I think it's all different.
So we have a project for all kinds of parts of the day, or even parts of the year, I think.
I think you're right.
And then there's the emergency knitting in the car.
Oh, that's my sock that's over here. Yeah.
Exactly. It almost always socks.
Yep.
Yes, because they're so small. Yeah, I'm working on a little hexagon blankie for my friend who is expecting. So that's easy to bring along.
Aww.
But I have project bags all over the house.
Well, and speaking of
hidden,
let's switch gears just a little bit here. And speaking of things that you're working on, let's talk about designing a little bit. Do you have certain things that inspire you to make a design out of it, or how does that work for you?
I carry around a notebook because I can get inspired by almost anything, anywhere, everywhere. So it's usually textures and other crochet patterns.
Excellent.
So yeah, I can scroll the Instagram, and I can walk around and see someone in a nice sweater that I like, or I am intrigued by cables, especially to apply them in Tunisian crochet.
Mm.
So whenever I see a pretty cable, last week even I was teaching, and while I was teaching, I saw one of my students was wearing a cabled machine knitted sweater, and I was intrigued by the cable. So after class, I asked her if I could take a picture.
Oh, that's excellent. My mother
Yeah,
designed clothing, not necessarily knitwear, clothing, and she always kept a notebook beside her bed too. She said she'd wake up in the middle of
yeah,
the night sometimes with this inspiration. I don't have that
yeah. And
gene.
then I sketch. I just sketch them, and I bought a year ago. I bought an electronic notebook because I was tired of the 20,000 notebooks that were lying around in my house and in my bags, so I could get
Mhm.
organized. And the nice thing is that all the PDFs fit in there, and I can make diagrams and anything on it, and all my sketches are together. And then last year, I also started planning a bit more, so I have my designs ready until, let's say, January
Mhm.
next
Mhm.
year. And because I also have my job and my family and friends, and not necessarily in that order, of course, I thought was going to be wise to start planning and start to be more in advance with my time, and prioritize things that I really wanted to make. So yeah, what I do next is I'll sketch it,
Mhm.
and I'll see if I can find some yarn that fits with it. And so I've reached out to a couple of indie dyers here
Yay.
in the
Mhm.
Netherlands and in the USA, and we are collaborating for my next 2 or 3
Oh,
designs.
that's fun. So then how does the rest of your
Yes.
process work? This is interesting.
So I'll get the
Mhm.
yarn and I'll stow it away because I have to finish other projects first. So I'm working on that. Finish other projects first because I have the list now. But it doesn't work that
No.
way, obviously. So I'm halfway through my next stop, which is in collaboration with a Dutch indie dyer who originated from the USA, which is Olivia and Oliver Fibers. And she sent me this beautiful California golden yarn,
Oh.
which is going to be the most beautiful textured summer top. And I'm halfway that. And then I decided I wanted to make my son, whose birthday was last week, a octopus,
I love octopus.
because why not?
Love
Yes.
them.
So that one is in the corner, but I know once I finish this octopus, which is supposed to be last week, of
Right.
course, I need to finish this. So my yarn is in a corner somewhere, waiting for when I finish this top, and then I can start swatching. So this is something I always do, and always want everyone to do, because after I swatch, I calculate everything,
Wow.
and I basically write down the pattern for myself.
Wow.
So this is what it's going to be, and I need to have the edge is going to be this many stitches, and it's going to be this long, and it's going to be their increases and those decreases, and then I just start making it.
Wow.
And then, of course, I frog, I recalculate,
Right.
and I try again.
The frog is our friend, right? Right?
The froggers are friends,
I have a
yes.
dear friend that says a good knitter is a good ripper, and I'm sure the same is true with crocheters.
Oh, heavens,
Absolutely.
yes. Yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's easier in crochet, which is kind of scary.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
We don't need a lifeline.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, because when
Yeah.
you ripped back, you've only got that one live stitch, and that makes a
Correct.
big difference. I
Exactly.
Yeah.
do crochet,
And
it's just
even
not a lot.
yeah, and even in Tunisian crochet, you can always go back to that first live loop of your forward pass.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your one live loop, and then you just start over.
So,
That
Ro, do
makes
you
sense.
always use test knitters also once you get to that stage? Once you've done it?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes. Because I can only make my size, and I'm only human, so I'm bound to have mathematical
Mm-hmm.
mistakes and typos. And here comes in the challenge that I'm not native English speaker, because sometimes I write my sentences and I'm very sloppy. So I'll write half sentences, and Tiffany knows that because she translates those for me into
Yay.
proper.
Go, Tiffany.
Yes.
Yeah, some of them do come across a little bit squirrel, but we straighten them up and we get them straight so that they make sense.
I have squirrel moments all the
Hmm.
time, so I totally understand. Oh.
Yeah.
I think that's the nature of being creative.
Yeah, writing. Writing is funny. I saw a cute meme the other day, and then we'll let Lisa take on her questions. But it was backspacing. You know how when you delete your backspacing, and it says, "Do
Hmm.
you think when we don't see anybody anymore that we're just being backspaced out of the story?" You think
Oh,
about that in designing, you know?
yeah. Because that's the thing. It's not consistent at all.
No,
It comes in waves.
I bet.
Well, I want to touch a little bit more on your collaborations because maybe you could touch on how do designers achieve those collaborations? How do collaborations work?
I think they come in many forms, to be honest. And one of the things that made me start on collaborations was obviously my husband saying I couldn't spend any more money on yarn because the attic is full, which is not true, obviously, but he's got a point.
Mhm.
And then I thought, okay, so how do I get free yarn? But it's not about the free yarn, it's about exposure. And it's about exposure for the both of
Yes.
us, of course. Um, but it always starts a little bit like that, I think. And I loved because I have loads of people, and we've talked about this as well already. My patterns are in English. I work with Tiffany. Um, my fan base, if I may call it that,
Yeah.
is from the USA. Like 80% of the people that buy my patterns are USA, Canada,
Mm.
UK. So there's a beautiful brand of yarn here in the Netherlands called Scheepjes.
Yes.
And I think you might know
I
it as
do.
Scheepjes.
Yes, I
Yes.
love it.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
So that's the only, or one of the only European brands that is available in or overseas or over oceans.
Hmm.
So I wanted to use the yarns that are widely available across the ocean.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I just asked, and I started with asking Lion Brand, and my very first Tunisian pattern is made with their yarns. So I'm incredibly grateful for them allowing me the opportunity to work with their yarns and to trusting me to make actually a pattern. And this was my first Tunisian pattern. And also I had only published one regular crochet pattern before that. So
Wow.
they trusted me enough to actually pull it off. And so I
I'm
did.
sure they saw that in you too.
They saw something. What is the
For sure.
timeline? Do you have a set timeline when you're working? For example, with an indie dyer, they change their dye colors fairly frequently.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you
Mm-hmm.
have a deadline?
I set myself a deadline most of the times, and definitely when I'm in a collaboration, because like I said, it's exposure to the both of us, so it means something to the both of us. And so for some collaborations, I pay some of the price of their yarn, like half the price. And some collaborations, I'm sent the yarn for free, but I always set a deadline then. If I don't have a collaboration, I'm making it just from my own stash.
Mhm.
It's much easier to throw it in a corner and come back to it, like after a year or so.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I do think it's important to make, if you're in a collaboration, to make agreements and to communicate about those. I mean,
Is that
life happens.
but
Sorry.
are those deadlines part of what they recommend, or is it strictly coming from you?
In those cases, it's strictly coming from me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And especially, I find that when I ask for yarn, I want to have a specific idea. You can't just go and say, "Hey, can I have some yarn?" Well, you could, but the answer would most likely be, "Why? What for? What are you going to make with it?" So I want to make something that I know I'm going to publish in the summer, for example. So I'll give them like a timeline saying the pattern will be published in summer, so I'll be testing in spring. So I'll need the yarn January, February.
Right.
I do want to interject really quickly, if I might. I do believe that it is dependent upon every collaboration, but I do think having a timeline where both sides are on the same track and agreement upon the timeline is very helpful. Like Ro has approached the dyers. I've also had other designers reach out to me going, "Hey, I was reached out to by this dyer. Can you help me build out a timeline?" So we'll sit down and map out a real quick timeline and get everything sorted out. And I think it's really respectful to both sides to have a timeline and be on the same page and be in agreement on what is to come.
Happens. So something can happen that you are delayed
Right.
by, and that's all totally fine as long as you communicate about it and don't ghost people. And I think I've learned that already from all the experience that I have as a tester. So there's also set timelines, and I've learned very early on that with 3 kids and a demanding job, I only test for people that have timelines that are, for me, acceptable and which are at a minimum of 8 weeks.
Right.
If I do a
Definitely,
garment,
definitely.
I can't whip something up in 4 or 5 weeks. And even 8 weeks is sometimes short.
That is the number one reason I don't do testing, because I don't act as a test knitter, because my life is such that I just can't get things done in the timeline that most people would expect. It's just the way my life is. I have homeschooled my 3 children. I now have 2 that have graduated. The third one, well, technically, she could graduate in a few months if she did one thing. She needs to write a research paper, and that's it. That's the last requirement she has to have. But at 16, I'm not going to let her do that. We're going to continue. We're going to get her some other courses that I feel will benefit her before she's done. But because of that, because I work, because I have other family obligations, testing just never made sense to me, because I knew that I couldn't do it fast enough.
Yeah, I think my shortest test, I think it was a knit, because I test knit and test crochet, was 3 weeks, and it was Her Royal Highness, kind of something that Kate Middleton wore one time, and Anne Budd, the famous knitwear designer, she tapped me to do one of the versions of it, and it was in fingering weight, and it was just like, wow, it was a big one, lots of ruffles. So yeah, it took quite a while. After that, yeah, after that, it taught me a little bit about time management. But I think 8 weeks is a really good time frame. I really do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
And if it has sleeves, I would say a minimum of 10 weeks.
Yep.
That's really good thought processes. I think that one of my biggest failures is in being able to schedule things accurately and know how much time it's going to take for things. I need to get better at that. I really do. I'm pretty good at my time estimates on my patterns. As a matter of fact, I always overestimate and say, but this is likely going to take less time. So this is your maximum. It could be less.
Right. Yeah. And I like that. I have a pattern in testing now, which is a tank top without sleeves. So I gave the testers 10 weeks for that.
Oh, wow.
And we extended the deadline with 1 week because of some yarn issues. Because I'm not on a deadline. I can publish my patterns whenever I want. So if I need to postpone for 1 week, I can, and I will. And this is also, I give myself the 10 weeks because I am not always available to adjust the pattern according to the tester's notes.
Right.
I just want to make a note for our listeners that what you're hearing in Ro's background is her birds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Since I won't be able to get rid of that noise, I just thought I would mention that. Well,
Thank you.
I think that you seem to have a really good handle on what time it's going to take to do things, and that does make collaborating a lot easier, I'm sure, because when you approach people, you can say, you know, this is what I'm planning. This is how long I think it's going to take me once I have the
Mm-hmm.
yarn in hand, and go from there.
Yep,
My
I agree.
my next question is going to deviate just a little bit, and we're going to look at the hard side of designing. Have you ever felt like designing wasn't worth it? Like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore.
No. I have thought, can I pull this off? But I've never thought I cannot do it. Because whenever I pick up another pattern, or I see something and I'm watching a lot of Netflix series, or I'm seeing a student with a nice sweater on, I'm like, oh, I can make something of that.
That's exciting.
So
That's exciting, though. Hear that.
it is quite exciting. I could see myself doing this for years and years to come. And one other thing that helps me a lot is that even though I design primarily for myself, I have a 6-year-old daughter
Oh, yay.
that loves rainbows and pinks.
Yay.
And she loves designing too. So she is drawing with me, and she is looking at things and saying, oh, you could make this for me. And I'm like, well,
Our kids come up
I
with the
could.
best. They really do. They come up with the best ideas.
They come up with great
Right?
ideas.
Even young, yes.
And I'm teaching her. I'm teaching her how to crochet. So we're starting just with the chains.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that one day we can do it together.
That is so much fun. That is so much fun.
Yeah.
I hope she doesn't grow out of it.
And even if she does for a couple of years, I mean, that's fine. I did myself.
Right. But it's something she'll always be able to take with her too, for like when she's later
Exactly.
in life. Yeah.
And I guarantee that if she's really into it now, that even if she drops it in her teenage years, there's a really strong chance she'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I mean, I was taught by my grandma, which I think a lot of us have been. And I didn't touch any yarn in my puberty years until I picked up one of those cross stitch pillow thingies.
Crewel work, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And then I felt the yarn and I thought, oh, I could do so much more with this.
That's wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, so now that we're talking about different helping your little daughter become a little crochet designer very young, what do you
Yeah.
I love that. I just really do. My kids are very artistic, not me.
And Denise, before you ask your next official question, I
Yes.
do want to throw another question in there.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you ever knit?
I do, definitely. And I get inspired by knitting as well, because there's the knit stitch, obviously, that we also have in Tunisian crochet. So with a lot of knit things, I'm like, I can make that in crochet. And I know there's a lot of crocheters out there that don't know how to knit, but they do like the knit stitch.
Yes.
The look of the knit stitch.
One of my knit designers has a pattern in the wings that I'll have to share with you when it comes out, because I think your daughter would love it. It's a little
yes,
a little dress, and it's not a full dress. It's like a jumper, what we call a jumper here. You know, it goes over a blouse, and the top of it is a rainbow.
Oh.
Oh, yes.
That
Yeah.
sounds
I
so
immediately
So
thought of that.
our design, yeah. So rainbows is always good. So our design, and it only needs sleeves, but I fear I have to forget because I fear she's grown out of it already. Is a pink cardigan with bubbles
Oh,
and rainbows.
how
Oh,
sweet.
that's
So I've made the body.
Yes.
makes me
So it could be like
a little one to
a
knit
little,
for again.
yeah.
Huh. Well, let's change up gear here for a couple of more minutes here. You mentioned that you planned ahead and that you have a calendar and all that good stuff. And someday, I'm very organized, except for in my creative process, and that's not organized yet. But what is waiting for you in the wings? Like, what's your next project, or what's your next big design that you got in your head?
All right, so I have 3 or 4 that are coming this year. And mind you, this year is until December. So what's coming out in the next 2 or 3 weeks is a beautiful tank top, which has a lovely texture and a V-neck shape. And it's done in Tunisian knit stitch and Tunisian purl stitch, which creates a nice V all over the body.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? Are all of your garments size inclusive? And when you say that, how far out do you go?
Yes, they are. And I go from 30-inch to 62-inch.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm having trouble with the last 3 sizes to have them tested. So if you are out there with size 50 something and up and you want to test, let me know. I'll send you the pattern. Because I'd love for some plus size testers. Yeah. All the other sizes are tested. And so myself, I'm a X, sometimes XXL 44-inch. So that size will always fit.
Right.
Because I made that one for myself. So that's what I'm having in the next couple of weeks, is a tank top. And then the next design is a summer top that is in the Californian yellow. Again, with a beautiful texture of a honeycomb stitch. And it has 2 bows on your shoulders. So it's really a sunshine, happy design. Yes.
I'll sign up for that one.
And then, all right.
I really will.
Thank you.
That sounds so, I will love the bee stuff and honeycombs. And I just think it's special and it's important.
It's gorgeous.
She loves the honeycomb stitch. I think it's because she can combine the colors and make them look really, really colorful and have a pop of color and still be kind of in there. She adores the honeycomb.
Yay.
And I can play with it. I love that. I can play with the colors. I love the pop of the colors, but I also love the texture, and it has all of that in once. So yeah. Fun. Yes. Okay. And then in autumn, I'm collaborating with Sam from Beachy Breeze Fibers. And she sent me this gorgeous autumn yarn. And it will be a sweater, again with the V-neck, because I absolutely love a good V-neck. I think it's flattering on everyone. Which will be crocheted in one piece with just the seaming on the sides and under the arms. So it will be long sleeves. And then for the winter, I'm collaborating with Woolfolk yarn. And they've sent me a really, really beautiful bulky yarn, which will be a raglan cardigan with a cable.
Ooh. Oh, that sounds so pretty.
And then I have one more design, and I've been talking about this and designing it for, I think, almost a year now. And I've been hesitant starting it. I've changed the designs a couple of times. I'm almost finished with the yoke, but it's in fingering weight yarn. And it's in 2 colors, and it has a cable. So there we go. It's all basic stitches. The cable's very simple. And it's going to be gorgeous.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
But I just need to finish it.
Oh.
Well, all of this makes me like drool a little bit because of the the thought of maybe being able to get into this, so that our listeners can maybe participate. Where can our listeners find you, Ro?
They can find me in Utrecht, the Netherlands, but that might be a little bit too far away. So I'm very easily reachable on the Instagram. I have a beautiful handle called Handmade by Roeska, or Handmade by Roeska. And you can find me on Gmail, which is handmadebyroeska@gmail.com. But I'm very active on the Instagram.
Okay, and where can they find your patterns?
Yes, so that's a little bit difficult at the moment. I am definitely on Ravelry, but I've closed my Etsy shop
Yes,
for the stripe.
I get that completely.
Yes. So I am hoping to set up another kind of shop. So I've heard about Ribble, something. Ribbler, that's the one. Thank you very much. So I'm most likely setting that one up. But if you have other ideas to set something up, because I want to be inclusive, I want to be available for everyone. But at the moment, it's just Ravelry then.
Yep. The whole thing with Etsy just is
Yes, but I
difficult.
want to say that if Ravelry is not good for you, then you can always send me an email.
That's great. We will make sure that that information is in our show notes so people can see how it's spelled, because obviously
Yes.
I honestly would have pronounced your name instead of Ruska. I would have pronounced it Roeska.
Yes.
And I knew that was
that's
wrong.
totally fine. But I have to say, it's not a common name. Also not in the Netherlands. It's actually, my name is derived from the names of my grandparents.
Aw.
And so my parents scrambled my grandmother's names together, and they made my name. So it's very uncommon, which I hated when I was younger, which I love now because it's unique.
It is unique, very unique.
I love it. I love it. We actually have a family name that my great-grandmother invented, and the story is that she combined two former beaus' names to come up with it.
Oh dear.
Now, whether that's the truth of the matter or not, no one in the family has ever used it as a first name, though. It's always been the middle name.
Well, and they do a lot of that here, combining like a husband and wife's name for a child's name or a grandparent's name. Like they do that, a lot of that here too.
Yeah. Well, our last question we love to ask all of our designers, because we are here to help people who are newer designers. You kind of fall into that category, but you're very well planned. Do you have any advice for a budding designer or someone who might think they could be a designer?
Yes, just do it. And I know this sounds really, really simplified. So there's some tips surrounding the just do it. It's get yourself a loving group of people for advice that you can always go, what do you think of this idea? What do you think I should do with this? How do you think I could approach this? Do you think this is done before or not? You could, and they will tell you, just do it. And so you have your people to pick you back up when you feel the imposter syndrome getting too much of you.
I love that. Totally love that. And obviously, Tiffany has been part of that group for you. I hope that I'm that for my designers as well, because Tiffany and I have a very similar attitude. We are collaborators. We help our designers make the best possible pattern we can. So we're there to be your cheerleader, honestly. And yet at the same time, we'll tell you, hey, I'm not sure this is working.
That's important too, because I could have started with something that wouldn't work, and then you feel discouraged,
Right.
and then you won't try again.
Right.
And that's the cue.
And oftentimes it's a matter of, I don't think it's working this way. What if we did it this way instead? You know, it is that back and forth between us that really makes a big difference. Don't you think, Tiffany?
Yeah, for sure. She's come at me a couple of times and she's been like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I'll be like, "Well, hey, that's great," or "No, let's try this." And she's always been really great with her testers' feedback and taking that and incorporating it. And she's got an amazing pool of testers, and I never cease to be amazed at what they produce off of her ideas, and it's just so amazing.
Well, they are absolutely precious, the testers.
she's always trying to expand herself and expand her exposure, and she's put out for
Right.
a couple of, submission calls, and she'll holler at me and she'll be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I'm, what if they don't take it? And I'm like, "Then you self-publish it. We've got an idea for later, and let's do it. Go for it. And you've got this." And yeah, we did, she's definitely the cheerleader aspect, and she's got this, she never ceases to amaze me with her creativity.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
why I'm where I'm at. Exactly. Independent stuff, works every time.
Mm-hmm.
It really
Yeah.
does.
Well, and we live in a
Yeah.
wonderful world that allows for that.
Hmm.
Even as much as 10 years ago, I would honestly have to say that designing would have been a much more difficult field to be in because you had to have the big name support, whether it
Right.
was being published in a book or a magazine or by a yarn company who was doing it strictly to encourage people to purchase their yarns. So it's a different world today.
Mm.
Yeah, it really is. Technology has definitely leveled the playing field for not just indie designers, but also indie dyers. And they have made it far more accessible for a lot of people to see their products and buy their products and get their products out there in the
Mm-hmm.
world. So it is definitely,
Definitely.
technology has definitely helped and come a long way.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, I really love the global feeling to it, because I'm working with you guys, and it's morning for you and the sunset for
Right.
me, but my testers are from Asia, and they're from Europe, and they're from the States, and it feels so connected.
I love that.
And I think that's beautiful. Yeah. And then, if I may come back to the question that you asked, so the tips for new designers is, and Tiffany touched upon that for a little bit already, is be open to feedback,
Mm.
because you can only grow when you get feedback.
Yes. I think that's great.
Yeah, feedback's hard to get and hard to give sometimes, you need to be open to it, and it most of the time the person giving the feedback's even scared to give it because they don't want to upset the person that's getting it. But once you take your 5 minutes to get into your feelings and feel them and be done, you can move on and you can grow from it, and you can do nothing but get better from it, from their help.
Yeah, and I like to comment on that, because I think if it's formulated correctly, it will not hurt.
Correct.
But not a lot of people can do that. So for feedback, I'd rather use feed forward and say, how can I help you to get better? And what do you need in order to get better? And so for that, you need someone to read through your patterns and see if they can totally understand it. Because if they cannot, the people that buy it will also not fully understand it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so this is not on you. And that's, I think, the last thing is, you've made this, you understand every stitch, but the way you transfer that into words onto
Right.
paper may be not fully comprehensible for everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Because we've been friends for what, a couple of years now, and
Mm-hmm.
so we've become so tight that I've learned your thought process, and I understand what you're trying to say and how you're going about things. But we get into testing, and the testers, somebody in testing is typically like, "Hey," and we're like, "Oh, okay,
Yep.
let's go back
Yep.
and look at this." But because I do understand you and your thought process, I get it, you get it, it's clear to us, but it's not clear to somebody else. And
Hmm.
that's why testing is so important, is so that you can make sure that it is clear to everybody on every level.
That is definitely
Yep.
why both the tech edit and the testing goes totally hand in hand. You cannot do just one. Yeah, I have had more questions about that than anything. And yes, you have to do both because a tech editor sees things one way, but the tester is actually doing it. And while a tech editor helps make that pattern clean and clear and consistent, they're not actually going through the steps. They're not going through the motions. I recently tech edited a pattern and then absolutely had to make that pattern. I mean, it was just too gorgeous, and in the process of knitting it went, "Oops, I missed this, and oops, I missed that," and so her next update has a couple of corrections that I found in the process of knitting it that I would have never seen in just reading it.
Yeah, that's what it is that it is all a collaboration. That's what testing
Yeah.
is. We joke that testing is, it's all team row because that's our jobs, between the editing and the testers is to make the pattern the best that we can. And you can tell the testers don't want to give feedback, but we keep telling them that, we keep reassuring them that, give us this information because without you, we couldn't make this pattern the best that it can possibly be. And you really are a part of that to make it amazing.
Yes.
That's what I always say to my testers. That's why you're doing it, to tell me
Right.
Right.
that you don't understand, or that this is not correct, or that this is not flowing well, or all these things.
Yeah, that is something that every test I've been a part of, we say it right off the top is please don't try and fix this without saying something. Please let us know if it's not
Mhm.
clear because
Right.
if you're not going to understand it, somebody else making it's not going to understand it. And it just gets really, and we have to be able to fix it so that everybody
Mhm.
understands it. And if you're listening, whether you're a tester or even a maker working a published pattern, if it's really not clear and you're really familiar with how patterns are and how they should read and you're not understanding it, reach out and let the designer know because that may be something that they need to go back and clarify, or you may be able to give a suggestion on how to clarify it so that everybody else can understand what's trying to be said.
I'd like to ask Lisa a
Mhm.
quick question here. So,
Sure.
Lisa, as a tech editor and now designer, do you have a special perspective about that that's changed it a little bit from not designing for yourself to now?
Do I have a special perspective on the tech edit and test knit
Yeah, as a designer now. Yeah.
as a designer? I need to get better at test knits. My first design just wasn't tested quite enough, and while it was still a good design, I really needed more testers. I really wish I could have found testers to do every size that weren't me, because it was a shawl in 3 sizes, and although all 3 sizes were done, 2 of them were done by me, and the
And
other size were done by my 2 testers. There were a couple of little issues that came up, and I really wish I'd had more people because it would have made sure that the sizing was correct and that sort of thing.
so maybe for Ro, I should ask her too, you and Lisa both. And I don't know, Tiffany, if you've designed anything. What's a good number of testers to have approximately, do you think? Either one of you, Lisa or Ro?
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 per size,
Oh, wow. Okay.
because yeah, we are all humans with a different background,
Right.
with a different level of crochet. I love to have different level of crocheters in my tester group because they read patterns differently. So I'd love to have some advanced crocheters in there because they have done so many different patterns already, so they have awesome suggestions. You love to have beginners because, if I advertise my patterns to be beginner
Mhm.
friendly, have some beginners in there. So I always ask, what's your level of crochet or Tunisian crochet? And would you be willing, what have you done before? Would you be willing to um, learn a new stitch or a new thing?
And yeah, to piggyback even off of the understanding is even if, we're all a 48-inch bust, it's not going to fit us all differently. So having multiple testers helps check the fit too.
That's what I think. I think you need to have 2 or 3 per size. So my tester groups are rather big. I think I have 15 or 20 people in
That
there.
makes sense. How about you, Lisa?
And I can't add anything to that because I haven't done enough with it to
Okay.
really be that experienced. I think I've actually learned a little bit from Ro because I wouldn't have thought of that many per size, but I think it's a great idea. I really
Mhm.
do.
I do too.
And then the second thing is why you want to have that many testers is because, like Tiffany said, you can show off how it looks on all the different bodies in all the different colors that people pick.
Mm,
And that is great advertisement as well.
mhm.
So there's a little bit of marketing strategy in there as well.
Yes.
Exactly.
And yeah, some have better stashes than others, and some just go to the big box stuff. And yeah,
Well, that makes it more accessible for everybody.
There you go.
Well, and
Yeah.
it does help when people start questioning yarn substitutions to see all the different
Correct.
possibilities.
Mhm.
I know people
Mhm.
who search patterns by the yarn used.
Ugh.
Yes,
So
I do
if
so
a
too.
project has used a different yarn than what your pattern sample was done in
Right.
is just one more thing that adds to the marketability of both the pattern and the
Mhm.
yarn.
And it's something that I have considered a long time ago because, as I said before, I work with yarns that are not widely available in the
Mhm.
USA. So I need to have those yarn substitutions in order for my patterns to be accessible.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, my ugh
Yeah.
was because I can't even remember the last time I used the pattern that was in or the yarn that was in any certain pattern. I can't remember the last time I did that.
Yeah, I don't think many of us do really,
Right.
but it does happen, and I know it does happen for a reason, especially with someone who is a beginner. They're more likely to want to go after that yarn because they're not as confident with their skills to determine or
Yeah.
whether or not this yarn will work, that sort of thing. But well, Ro, this has been great, and I know
Excellent.
I've learned a little bit.
I know I have.
And it's been great having all of us here with you, and hearing Tiffany's take on that relationship between the two of you as well. That's
Mhm.
another thing that will only help designers to understand your tech editor is there to be a partner, to be a collaborator, to help you in all of the parts and processes. So feel free to reach out. Anyway, it's been a great day. Thank you so much. I have absolutely loved this. I can't wait for our people to hear it.
I do appreciate your time, Ro, and yours too, Tiffany, and of course always Lisa's.
All right, thank you.
thank you for being here and being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Join us next time as two tech editors talk pattern writing and tech editing. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you listen, and join the conversation in our Ravelry or Facebook groups. For show notes or knit tech editing and related services, please visit my website at arcticedits.com. To inquire about crochet tech editing and other services Tiffany provides, please go to wootcrafts.com.